Have you ever done everything right for a woman? Supported her, helped her, showed up when it mattered, answered the late messages, listened to every problem, protected her feeling, even when it meant swallowing your own, and still watched her slowly lose interest? Not suddenly, not dramatically, slowly, quietly. The replies become shorter, the warmth becomes polite, the connection becomes thinner. And one day you realize, you didn't lose her in a fight. You lost her while doing everything right. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If effort creates loyalty, why do the most giving men so often end up confused, exhausted, and emotionally replaced?
Why are the men who sacrifice the most
The ones who struggle the hardest to be chosen? Why does being good to her stop working the moment real attraction is supposed to begin? Today I want to show you the one truth most men never hear, not because it's cruel, but because it quietly destroys a very comforting illusion. Women are not loyal to what you do for them. They are not loyal to how much you give. They are not loyal to how available you become. They are not loyal to how deeply you understand their pain. They are loyal to how they feel inside themselves when they are with you, the emotional version of herself that only exists in your presence. And that single shift, from doing things for her to understanding the emotional state you create around her, changes everything about attraction, everything about connection, everything about long-term loyalty. Because loyalty is not built by effort. It is built by emotional experience. Stay with me until the end, because this will completely rewire how you show up with women. Most men are raised with a dangerous belief. If I treat her well, if I sacrifice, if I go out of my way, if I prove how serious I am, then she will value me. That belief is comforting. It feels moral. It feels safe. It feels fair. But attraction is not a moral system. It is a psychological one. And psychology doesn't respond to effort the way your heart does. It responds to emotional experience. Let me be very clear. Women appreciate kindness. They respect generosity. They notice effort. But appreciation and loyalty are not the same thing. Gratitude is not desire. Respect is not emotional attachment. And being good to her is not what makes her emotionally invest. What makes her emotionally bond is this: who she becomes when she is around you. Not what you provide, not what you fix, not what you sacrifice, but what state of self she enters when she is in your presence. This is the first hard truth. Women do not attach to behavior. They attach to emotional identity. Ask yourself this quietly. When she is with you, does she feel calm or tense, free or careful, seen or managed, soft or guarded, alive or emotionally flat? Because whatever emotional version of herself she repeatedly experiences with you, that is what she bonds to. That is what she becomes loyal to. Most men focus on creating moments. Very few men create emotional environments. And women don't fall in love with moments. They fall in love with emotional climates. Here is where men make the biggest mistake. They think loyalty is built by doing more. More texts, more availability, more reassurance, more checking in, more explaining their feelings, more emotional transparency, more pursuit. But psychological attachment does not grow through intensity. It grows through emotional safety combined with emotional independence. That combination is extremely rare. Let me explain this simply. A woman must feel emotionally safe with you, but she must also feel that your emotional center does not depend on her. Those two together create something incredibly powerful. Stability without pressure, connection without emotional obligation, presence without emotional hunger. Most men collapse into emotional dependence without realizing it. They start using her reactions to regulate their self-worth. If she replies fast, they feel good. If she pulls back, their mood drops. If she is warm, they open emotionally. If she becomes distant, they become anxious. She becomes the emotional thermostat of your nervous system. And women feel this instantly, not logically, emotionally. Here is something very few men understand. A woman does not want to be responsible for your emotional stability. It feels heavy. It feels unsafe. It feels like pressure disguised as affection, even if you never say it out loud. Your emotional dependency leaks through your tone, your pacing, your over-availability, your need for reassurance, your constant emotional checking, your desire to define the relationship early, your subtle fear of losing her. And here is the painful part. The more emotionally dependent you become, the less emotionally safe she feels. Because safety is not about how gentle you are. It is about how stable you are. This is the loyalty trigger most men miss. Women are loyal to the emotional structure you represent in their life. Not the help. Not the favors. Not the sacrifices. Not the time. The structure. Your emotional consistency. Your calm presence. Your grounded reactions. Your ability to remain centered when things are uncertain. Your emotional leadership. Let me say something very clearly. Emotional leadership does not mean control. It means you are not emotionally led by her fluctuations. You don't rise and fall with her moods. You don't chase emotional closeness when she needs space. You don't punish emotional distance with silence. You don't beg emotional clarity when ambiguity appears. You remain emotionally anchored inside yourself. That is leadership. Here is a quiet truth. Most men try to earn loyalty by becoming useful. High-value men become emotionally reliable. There is a massive difference. Think about this carefully. If your presence disappears tomorrow, what emotional experience disappears with it? Not what services, not what favors, not what support. What emotional state does she lose access to? That is what determines emotional attachment. Women do not fall in love with your effort. They fall in love with your emotional impact. Let me break down what actually creates loyalty at a psychological level. First, emotional calm. When a woman feels calm in your presence, her nervous system associates you with safety, not excitement, not intensity, not drama. Safety. This is not boring. This is grounding. Her body relaxes around you. Her guard lowers without her consciously deciding. She feels like she can be herself without performance. That feeling becomes addictive. Most men mistake calm for lack of attraction. They try to constantly stimulate emotion, tease, push, trigger, excite, impress. But long-term loyalty is built on nervous system regulation, not emotional spikes. Second, emotional permission. A woman becomes deeply bonded to a man when she feels emotionally allowed around him. Allowed to be imperfect, allowed to be unsure, allowed to be soft, allowed to be strong, allowed to be quiet, allowed to be expressive, allowed to be human. You don't rush her emotions. You don't label her feelings. You don't fix everything she expresses. You don't analyze her emotional state. You simply create emotional space. That space becomes emotional loyalty. Third, emotional self-respect. This is one of the strongest attraction forces. You respect your own emotional boundaries. You don't tolerate disrespect just to keep connection. You don't abandon your standards to avoid conflict. You don't betray your values to be liked. You don't disappear into emotional accommodation. You remain solid inside yourself. Women feel emotional self-respect as psychological strength, not arrogance, strength. Here is a deep truth. A woman trusts your emotional safety when you trust yourself. If you do not trust your own emotional position, she will not be able to rest inside it. Now let's talk about what destroys loyalty, even when everything seems good. Men confuse emotional transparency with emotional dumping. Sharing is healthy, but emotional offloading is not connection. It is regulation. When you use a woman to stabilize your emotional world, she becomes your emotional anchor. And anchors are heavy. Even love gets tired of carrying emotional weight that does not belong to it. Here is the pattern. You open up deeply. She listens. She supports. She comforts. At first it feels bonding, but over time, she starts to feel emotionally responsible. She begins to monitor your moods. She worries about triggering you. She adjusts herself emotionally around you. And slowly, attraction drains. Not because you are emotional, but because you are emotionally dependent. Women do not bond to emotional need. They bond to emotional availability without emotional reliance. That is the difference. This is why some men confuse women. They see men who give less, invest less, text less, explain less, and still receive more loyalty. It is not because those men care less. It is because those men are not emotionally leaning on the relationship to feel whole. A woman does not want to complete you. She wants to join you. There is a massive psychological difference. Now I want you to listen to this very carefully. Women are loyal to one thing only: the emotional identity they experience through you. The version of themselves you unlock. The emotional state your presence repeatedly creates. The way their nervous system reorganizes around you. The emotional safety of your structure. The emotional freedom of your boundaries. The emotional consistency of your presence. That is what becomes irreplaceable. Here is a powerful test. If she talks about how she feels when she is with you, not what you do for her, not what you give her, but how she feels? Then you are building emotional loyalty. Now let me show you how to actually apply this in your real life. Stop trying to impress. Start becoming emotionally steady. Stop trying to prove your value. Start protecting your emotional center. Stop trying to secure the connection. Start allowing the connection to grow without pressure. Stop explaining your intentions excessively. Start demonstrating emotional clarity through consistency. When something goes wrong, do not collapse emotionally. Do not chase resolution. Do not panic. Stay calm. Address it directly. Then return to emotional neutrality. That creates trust. When she pulls back, do not follow emotionally. Do not mirror distance with insecurity. Do not rush reassurance. Stay grounded. Continue living your life. Continue showing emotional presence without emotional pursuit. That builds emotional security. When she opens up, listen. Do not rush solutions. Do not minimize. Do not over-validate. Hold space. That builds emotional permission. When attraction grows, do not reorganize your entire life around her. Integrate her into your life. Do not replace your life with her. That maintains emotional structure. If you remember only one thing from this video, remember this. A woman is not loyal to how much you do. She is loyal to how emotionally safe and alive she feels around who you are. Before we finish, I want you to ask yourself one honest question. Not what have I done for her, but who does she become when she is with me? That answer reveals everything. If this video helped you see attraction differently, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a man who is trying too hard to be chosen instead of becoming emotionally grounded. Because understanding female psychology is not about manipulation. It is about emotional maturity. It is about self-leadership. It is about becoming the emotional environment a woman can finally rest inside. Women don't stay because you carried their problems. They stay because you carried your own emotional world with strength. They stay because when life becomes heavy for her, your presence does not add more weight. It softens the chaos instead of amplifying it. They stay because your presence regulates rather than consumes. Because when emotions rise, you don't panic. You don't rush. You don't emotionally collapse into her. You remain grounded, and that grounding becomes contagious. They stay because your emotional stability becomes their emotional relief. Not relief from responsibility, but relief from constantly having to be strong, guarded, alert, or emotionally armored. They stay because your internal structure becomes their external comfort. Because your calm becomes a place they can finally rest inside. They stay because your emotional center becomes their emotional invitation. An invitation to open, to soften, to trust, to finally exhale. Think about that. In a world where most men are reacting, chasing, proving, performing, you become the one who is anchored. She doesn't feel managed. She doesn't feel analyzed. She doesn't feel like she's being fixed. She feels safe, and safety is rare. When a woman senses that you are not trying to control the outcome, not trying to rush intimacy, not trying to secure her validation, something shifts inside her. Her guard lowers. Her tone softens. Her honesty deepens because she realizes she doesn't have to defend herself around you. She doesn't have to be perfect. She doesn't have to perform either. That's what emotional self-leadership does. It silently communicates. I can handle my emotions. I can handle uncertainty. I can handle you being fully yourself. And that is magnetic. Not your words, not your promises, not your over-efforting, your presence, your ability to remain grounded when tension rises, your ability to stay calm when she pulls back, your ability to respond instead of react. That's what creates attraction that lasts. Because emotional stability feels like strength. And strength, and when it's quiet, it feels safe. She doesn't stay because you convinced her. She stays because she feels different around you. More relaxed, more real, more understood. And when a woman feels that, she doesn't want to leave. Not because she's afraid to lose you. Not because you pressured her to stay. Not because you convinced her with perfect words. She stays because being around you feels like peace. And peace is addictive. When she feels emotionally safe, her nervous system relaxes. She doesn't feel like she has to test you. She doesn't feel like she has to pull away to regain power. She doesn't feel like she has to question where she stands. Because your stability answers those questions without you saying a word. You're not shaken by her moods. You're not threatened by her independence. You're not destabilized by uncertainty. You remain centered. And that center becomes her anchor. That is psychological stability. the ability to regulate yourself when emotions rise, the ability to stay grounded when tension appears, the ability to hold connection without gripping it too tight. Most men try to create attraction through intensity, through constant texting, through double messages when she doesn't reply fast enough, through good morning and good night rituals designed to secure position, through grand gestures that feel romantic, but are secretly driven by anxiety, through emotional highs and lows that create temporary sparks. And for a moment, it works. The dopamine hits, the excitement rises, the conversations feel electric. But intensity burns fast, because what feels like passion in the beginning often reveals itself as instability later. She starts to feel the pressure behind the effort. She senses the attachment underneath the charm. She notices that your mood depends on her response time, her tone, her availability, and attraction quietly weakens. Not because you cared, but because you needed. Stability builds deep. It doesn't rush. It doesn't flood. It doesn't overwhelm. It allows space. Emotional leadership means you lead yourself first. Before you lead conversations, before you lead the frame, before you lead the relationship, you lead your own nervous system. You don't collapse into insecurity when she pulls back for a day. You don't chase validation when she seems distant. You don't overcorrect when things feel uncertain. You don't suddenly become louder, funnier, more impressive just to regain control. You stay centered. You trust your value, even in silence. You trust your direction, even without reassurance. You trust that if she stays, it's by choice, not pressure. And that energy is powerful, because when a woman feels like she is choosing you freely, without manipulation, without emotional management, without subtle guilt tactics, without chaos disguised as passion, attraction deepens. It becomes calm. She doesn't feel like she's on a roller coaster. She doesn't feel like she's constantly stabilizing you. She doesn't feel like she has to decode your emotional state. It becomes steady. She knows who you are today will be who you are tomorrow. She knows conflict won't turn into collapse. She knows tension won't turn into drama. And it becomes real. Because real attraction isn't built on spikes. It's built on safety. Not fireworks. Not dramatic confessions at 2 a.m. Not jealousy games. Not obsession disguised as devotion. Connection. Grounded. Centered. Self-led. The kind of connection where she can relax into her femininity because you are solid in your masculinity. The kind of connection where silence feels comfortable, not threatening. The kind of connection where she stays, not because she's emotionally hooked, but because she feels emotionally safe. That is attraction at its deepest level. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time,